2023. We have present Councillor Allison. We have apologies from Councillor Bradley. Also present is Councillors Brogan, Brown, Archie Buchanan, Matthew Buchanan, Kalikes, Devlin, Donnelly, Joe Fagan. Is Councillor Fagan in the meeting? I don't see Councillor Fagan. We have apologies from Councillor Frame and Councillor Anderson is substituting. We have apologies from Councillor Handybode and Councillor Cowie is substituting. We have present Councillors Horn, Horsham, Hose, Johnson Dempsey, Logan, MacDonald, McClymont. We have apologies from Councillor Nelson and Councillor Lockhart is substituting. And we also have present Councillors Nugent, Ross, Scott, Walker and Watson. I'll hand back to the Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy. Just before we start, those of you here probably are aware that our Chief Officer Suman has been awarded an honorary professorship at Caledonian University, and I believe it's to develop a strategic partnership with Glasgow Caledonian and South Lanarkshire to address health inequalities across the area. So on behalf of the committee, that's an extremely prodigious appointment. I'd like to congratulate on behalf of the committee, and I would look forward to some ongoing collaboration and innovative work in the field of health and social care and inequalities. I don't know if you want to say a few words on that, Suman.
Good morning. This is the point where I feel I need to be talking with a lot more gravitas than normal, since I'm still getting used to the new title. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. I've been really struck by the very kind messages and support I've had over the course of the last week. It's a real honour from Glasgow Caledonian. I don't take it lightly. I'm also really thoughtful that it's not just a reflection on me, but all the people I work with here, and indeed elsewhere, in terms of the considerable amount of work we are doing to address health inequalities and the considerable scope there is for greater innovation in this area. I'm very confident that South Lanarkshire, alongside other partners, can be at the forefront of dealing with these kind of issues, and I'm certainly looking forward to the work ahead. But again, my thanks.
Thank you, Suman, and congratulations again on behalf of the committee. With that, I'll move on to the agenda. Item 1. Sorry, Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to echo your comments in terms of the award for Suman and pass on my own and the SNP group's congratulations. So thanks very much and well done, Suman. Well deserved.
Thanks, Councillor MacDonald. Anyone else? No. Item 1 is declaration of interests. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting, pages 5 to 12, minutes of 15th of February 2023. Can those be approved as a correct record? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to monitoring items. Item 3, revenue budget monitoring 2022 to 23 for the period 1st of April 2022 to 24th of February 2023. And this is pages 13 to 20 in your pack. And I'd like to ask Graham Booth to speak to the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report, which is on pages 13 to 20 of your papers, is to provide information on actual expenditure against budget for social work resources for financial year 2022-23 for the period 1st of April 2022 to 24th of February 2023, which is financial period 12, and to provide a forecast for the year to 31st of March 2023. This is the 4th revenue monitoring report to committee for financial year 2022-23. Sections 5.1 to 5.5 on pages 13 and 14 outline the probable outturn position as per the last report to committee, and the resource is reporting a break-even position after approved transfers to reserves of 5.635 million. Underspends within performance and support services and justice services are offset with an overspend in children and family services, giving an overall break-even position. The overspend in children and family services is after funding of 6.5 million has been added in 2022-23. The adult and older people position shows an unplanned underspend of 5.635 million before transfers to reserves. Included within this position is a commitment to the IGIB in relation to specific funding, which is we do not expect to spend this financial year. The Executive Committee on 1st of February approved that the IGIB retains this non-recurring underspend within their reserves, earmarked for future care costs. The adult and older people position also includes an unplanned underspend in core council budgets. The Executive Committee on 1st of February approved the proposal that this underspend is retained by the Council to help cover the children and family budget pressures in 23-24. This will be facilitated by a transfer to reserves, allowing the monies to be used next financial year as required. And section 5.6 on page 14 outlines the financial position to the 24th of February 2023, with the resource again reporting a break-even position after proposed transfers to reserves. This includes a further unplanned underspend on the delegated budgets for adults and older people, which is offset by a net overspend in the other services of the resource. Appendices A to E on pages 16 to 20 provide details on the forecast year-end position and the period 12 position, and detailed variance explanations and proposed budget variants for each of the services are shown in appendices B to E. I refer members back to section 2 of the report. Committee is asked to note the forecast break-even position to 31st of March 2023 after transfers to reserves. Note the break-even position as at 24th of February 2023 after transfers to reserves, and to approve the proposed budget variants. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. I have Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. There's a recurring issue across these papers about underspend in employee costs, and I'm just trying to get a handle on where are we with recruitment issues, because at the end of the day it's got to have an impact on the care and the services that we provide. And is there any light at the end of the tunnel, or are we going to have to limp along with understaffing issues because of recruitment? Thanks, Chair.
Suman, thank
Good morning, Councillor Watson. So picking up on your point, as I've talked to committee before in relation to this issue, there is no end date when we'll resolve these issues any more than there is an end date for any other authority area in Scotland. As members will recognise from the risk report later on, we have highlighted labour market supply issues as being the key challenge for social work, social care in South Lanarkshire. That isn't unique to us, as I've talked about before, and indeed that's been highlighted by Audit Scotland as a national-wide issue. We continue to work very hard in terms of our approach to recruitment. Colleagues can talk about the progress we made, particularly in terms of our care at home services. We've also talked about the challenges still in terms of holding on to the staff, given the buoyant the overall employment market that people are now operating on, and a whole range of challenges in front of us. We've also talked before here around the Care Academy that we're bringing in place with NHS Lanarkshire and North Lanarkshire Council, which again is about providing opportunities for individuals who work within our social work, social care services to continue to grow and develop here, to provide them with the pipeline for progression and indeed to recruit more staff. It's also worthwhile noting that the recruitment campaigns that we have run and that we've shared with committee members have very much informed the national recruitment campaigns which have been developed, and indeed have informed the work of other authority areas. So we are able to point to a whole range of activities that we are progressing with to address what is a very serious issue. But we should be under no illusions that this is the key challenge for social care and social work right across Scotland, which is the fact that there is a real supply issue. That's one of the reasons why it's so important, the work which is ongoing through COSLA and with government in terms of terms and conditions and ongoing discussions that we have locally in terms of, again, making sure that the staff we have working for us feel supported, valued, and we develop them so they can progress and stay with us. Happy to hand it over to Ian to provide a bit more flesh in the bone, as well as Liam in terms of children and young people's, children's social work and justice services. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. So as Sue's describing there, we've got 2 or 3 particular kind of hotspots in terms of recruitment. Social care in general is one of them. Some of the underspends we've reported have been linked to new funding coming in, and we've been trying to build up our kind of home first offer in terms of care at home around kind of supporting independence and rehabilitation services. So that involved a considerable level of recruitment. So that's kind of ongoing, showing some signs of success. But we're essentially kind of pulling in social care staff, perhaps from other sectors, so from independent providers, competition with care homes, daycare, so there's a lot of interest in that kind of workforce from a range of different employers, or even within the council's own offer. So we're continuing to recruit constantly, working closely with our HR colleagues to make sure we've got a range of campaigns out there and pulling people in as quickly as we possibly can. Other areas where we have challenges include the social worker workforce, and we're not alone in that. So in particular, kind of registered staff, social workers, experienced nursing workforce, there is a shortage of supply in the market there. We're obviously having to compete with other employers for that workforce, and we're looking at ways in which we can do that more robustly than we do at the moment.
Sorry, I'll not add much more to that, but just to give a bit of assurance that when there is supply issues within the system, we do make sure that we prioritise the most vulnerable children, families and adults within the community, and that's making sure that public protection arrangements are maintained and able to be seen as a priority.
Chair,
Thank
can
you.
I come back? Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I fully accept the issues that are out there. But I think as well, have we got an indication of the campaigns that have been running being successful? It's not if other people are picking up on some of their campaigns, but are they being successful? And I think we've got an expectation of the social care that we want to deliver. Are we going to have to reevaluate that based on the workforce that's available? And I think the other question I've got is, what are we doing to protect our existing workforce that we're putting an extra burden on and pressure on them? And by doing that, we're making the job less attractive for them, because I know anecdotally that we have had staff leaving the service because of what's been expected of them, and the pressure's been put on them because we have got an understaffed workforce for what we're expecting from the service. Thanks.
Yeah, I can pick up some of that. So if we get an example of success in recruitment, I mean, last year, I think we recruited over 5,000 hours of care at home staff. So it's a considerable number of people, but we're offsetting that against essentially an ageing workforce. So we've got existing employees who are looking to reduce their hours, perhaps as a phasing towards retiral, offering more kind of flexible arrangements. As we kind of created some new posts around redesign, we've created promotion opportunities for some of our staff who've moved into kind of promoted roles, kind of create a kind of gap behind them, as it were. We then have to fill. So it's not a kind of linear process. It's quite a kind of complicated picture in terms of all the kind of the change and throughput around posts and turnover and retirals and so forth. In terms of your point around welfare of the workforce, that's a primary concern for us, making sure our staff are well supported. We have tried to create some additional capacity to provide support around staff. So I'll give an example around social worker recruitment. There's new kind of requirements coming in where we've got to support people more thoroughly in their first year post-qualifying, and we've recently recruited 2 senior practitioners to provide that kind of supervision and coaching support to our newly qualified workers, just to kind of make sure when they land in South Lanarkshire, as it were, they've got good backup and good support and someone to turn to for advice when they're encountering a new circumstance. So we are very much focused on that, and we'll be continuing our efforts to promote welfare for our staff team.
Okay, thanks, Ian. What I would also say in relation to that, we discussed this often, obviously, at some of the agenda meetings, and we did agree to look at a more in-depth analysis of why the numbers of people are actually leaving. Obviously, there's clear reasons for that in terms, as Ian was saying, of retiral and moving on to other jobs, but also we thought it would benefit from diving deeper into that and making sure we have a good understanding of why people are leaving as well, to see if there's anything that we can sort of shore up there. So we are, constantly monitoring all of these issues. Robert.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Two questions, if I may. One is just to confirm what I think the position is. There's no change in the actual reserves position here. These are all figures that were dealt with by previous decisions, were they? There's no additional requirements asked for there. Secondly, on the question of the Care Academy, I wonder if we get some sort of insight as to the timescales and the present position on that one. Thank you.
Certainly can come in and respond in relation to the Care Academy. So you'll be aware that it was previously reported to committee in terms of the Care Academy, as Suman had already mentioned about. That's about creating more pipelines and more routes into social care as a career. So there's a number of activity that's going on across the council, and what we're trying to do is just tie that up with, in conjunction with North Lanarkshire Council and NHS, and it all gets badged as the Care Academy. So the Memorandum of Understanding has now been signed off, and that therefore means that these arrangements can become more formal, and there's ongoing meetings. And I think I had mentioned previously, I reported previously, there's a number of work streams, employability, recruitment and retention, and the other one, which escapes me right now, apologies, but there's 3 different work streams that are working together. So those meetings are ongoing, and then we'll be pulling together something that will be a bit more formal in relation to the Care Academy, and when that happens, we can bring that back to committee at that time.
I suppose just following on that, is that intended to be fairly imminent? Because it's quite an important initiative to grow our own workforce in that regard. And it does strike me as well as an opportunity for a bit of publicity around it, when it comes to that point, to make people aware of it and to encourage it and so on and so forth. So I'm interested really in just in the timescales, whether that's going to launch shortly.
Thank you. So in effect, the Care Academy is launched. It's an iterative process, so there's a number of stages. So as my colleague said, so the first one is to consolidate everything we've got done and also reduce duplication, so provide clarity of processes for both the colleges, the universities, and also in terms of our overall approach to recruitment. Alongside that, then we will then have a new tranche of work where we're identifying new opportunities, and again, we're in conversation with the universities and the colleges in respect of that. So this is going to happen in waves as opposed to a big bang. So we will keep on coming back to members here and indeed in other fora as part of not least the workforce returns that we provide to committees such as this, to provide you with a regular update in respect of it. We are absolutely quite keen and committed to keeping a high profile of this one. I think it's something that sets us apart from other parts of Scotland. And so again, that's another reason why people should hopefully want to engage with us and work with us. But as I said, it will also be an ongoing piece of work. So we will have new things that come onto the roster, if you like, to update committee about as we go over the coming months, and I expect years. And then circling back to your initial question, yes, there's nothing here that hasn't already been discussed and approved by other meetings, including the Executive Committee.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anyone else. Does the meeting agree to approve the report and the recommendations in section 2.1?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to item 4, capital budget monitoring 2022 to 23 for the period 1st of April 2022 to 24th of February 2023, and that's pages 21 to 24 in your pack. And can I ask Lorraine O'Hagan to speak to the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Item 4 then is the standard capital budget monitoring report, and as the Chair said, it's the 4th of the financial year and reflects the period to the end of February, which is accounting period 12. Section 3 gives you the background and explains how the budget was arrived at. At the last meeting of committee, the budget was 3.903 million, and there's been no change to the budget since that meeting in February. Section 5.1 notes the resources total capital programme then of the 3.903 million. Section 5.2 on page 22 explains that in terms of the spend anticipated for the year, the current working projections at that point showed an overspend of 400,000, and that's only due to the timing of spend on the multi-year community alarms and Swiss Plus replacement projects. As we've noted in section 5.2, the overall funding package for these projects is already in place with an allocation into next financial year, so any additional spend that we incur in the current year will be offset by the budget available in 23-24, so we'll manage that over the financial year end. As noted in section 5.3, the year-end position for the council has currently been finalised, but it does appear to be in line with our expected position. We will report the final position for the overall capital programme to the Executive Committee in June, and then we'll come back to the next Social Work Resources Committee thereafter with our own specific programme. Finally, section 5.4 notes then that the anticipated spend was 3.788 million, and we had actual spend to the end of February of 4.084. So at that point, we were 296,000 ahead of profile, and again, reflecting the spend on the community alarms and Swiss Plus replacement projects. The overall position is detailed in Appendix A to your report on page 25. I'd look to then refer committee back to the recommendation in section 2 of the report that the social work resources budget of 3.903 million spent to the 24th of February of 4.084 million, and an outturn for the year of 4.3 million be noted. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. I don't see any hands. Does the committee agree to approve the report and the recommendations in section 2?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 5, workforce monitoring, December 2022 to February 23, pages 25 to 32 in your pack. And can I invite Eileen McPake to speak to the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the standard employment information report for the resource, and it's covering the period of December 2022 to February 2023. So section 4.1 outlines attendance statistics for committee, and the details are in Appendix 1. The absence rate for the resource for February is 7.5% compared to a council-wide figure of 5.9%. This is increased by 0.1% compared to the previous month, and compared to the last year figure, it has decreased by 0.8%. This translates to a projected annual average for the resource of 7.7% compared to a council-wide figure of 5.8%. Moving on, section 4.2 to 4.5, and the details are in Appendix 2. And the main points are that during the period, there were 337 occupational health referrals. There was 1 disciplinary hearing. There was no grievances or dignity at work issues raised. There was 42 accidents or incidents recorded during the period, and there was 41 leavers, and of them 41% completed exit interviews. Details of posts that became vacant are in Appendix 2A, and there was 72 posts that became vacant. Of them, 70 of them will be filled, 1 will be held pending a review of service, and 1 was at the end of a fixed term contract. So I'll refer committee back to section 2 and ask that the workforce monitoring information for social work resources for the period December 2022 to February 2023 be noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eileen. I don't see anyone wanting to comment. Does the meeting agree to approve the report and the recommendations in section 2, the workforce monitoring report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6 is an update of the 2022-23 risk register and risk control plan, and that's pages 33 to 44 in your pack. And could I ask Craig to speak to the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So people will recognise the risk report as set out in the papers, and you'll see that we have highlighted the top 5 risks at Appendix 2. 4.3 also lists some of the further risks that are monitored across the organisation and the respective action taken in relation to each of those. Interestingly, some of the risks that the resource is managing at the moment have already been discussed as part of an earlier debate, which shows that we are alert to these areas. And finally, what we'd do is ask the committee to approve the recommendations at paragraph 2, namely to note the report and to approve that the top risks are as reported.
Thank you, Craig. I don't see any hands. Does the meeting agree to approve the report and the recommendation in section 2?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to items for decision. Item 7, Social Work Resource Plan 2023-24, pages 45 to 64 in your pack. And again, could I ask Craig to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So you will see that the background is provided at paragraph 3, whilst the main areas covered by the report are set out in paragraph 4. The detail of the content of the report, which are significant, is included in Appendix 1. And it wouldn't be my intention to go through each of the areas within the report. Obviously, they're self-explanatory, but members will recognise the scale of the challenge in the year ahead, and in particular some of the impact of the COVID pandemic that subsequently we are having to grapple with as part of our providing services in the coming year. Again, I would ask members to note the contents and to agree the 4 recommendations set out in paragraph 2, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Craig. Robert?
Yeah, just a small question on the figures on page 60. It refers to the things like the percentage of children seen by a supervising officer within 15 days and so on. Now, the report there in terms of the last year's achievements is quite good in terms of 94% of children seen by a supervising officer, 75% target, 94% of statutory supervising visits further down, 90% target. Are these progressive targets? In other words, we presumably are wanting to have an improved position each year round. When we're doing quite well in terms of achievement, should we be pushing the target up a little bit? Really what I'm saying on that one.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll take that. The targets are set are national targets. So
All right.
what we would want to do is keep it as the national target so that we are reporting like for like with any of the national returns. So we're not putting it as a straight change.
No.
But the fact...
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Faulkner?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. It's in page 63, action 14. I think there's a bit of an anomaly there. In the middle, report to social and continuing development of Home First approach, including Operation Commencing Blantyre Life Facility. Home First means for hospital to home. Is that via Blantyre?
So I can cover that. So Home First is a very broad concept. As you're describing there, Councillor, a lot of it is based on assisting people to be discharged from hospital safely, going back home. So the majority of the Home First service is very much community orientated, providing services, care home services, EHP services into the person's own home. But the Blantyre Life Facility is also part of that kind of continuum of care. So it's like kind of the bed-based version of the same thing. So if people require a bit of additional support and a bed-based resource for a period of time to then support them to go home, the Blantyre Hub provides that kind of element. So it's all part of the same continuum of intermediate care in effect.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I don't see any other hands. Does the meeting agree to approve the report and the recommendations in section 2?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 8, scheme for curator ad litem reporting officers panel, jurisdiction of the Sheriff Court, and that's pages 65 to 76 in your pack. And could I ask Liam to speak to the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. The purpose of the report is to request approval for the scheme for curator ad litem and reporting officers panel, which we require within South Lanarkshire. You'll see within the report as well, there was previously agreement for the Hamilton and Lanark scheme, so this is actually to broaden it to Glasgow. In terms of recommendations, we're looking for the report to be noted and we're looking for the scheme to be approved for Glasgow. Section 3 in the report gives some background to the Curator Ad Litem Reporting Officers panel and the regulations that require that we need to have one within a South Lanarkshire context. And you'll see, just to reinforce, that it's about ensuring the safeguarding interests of children. Section 4 in the report just restates that we've previously had approval for the Lanark and Hamilton areas, and we're now seeking approval for Glasgow. And we've had discussions with the Glasgow Bar Association, who are in agreement with the scheme as it's laid out at Appendix 1 for your information. Should note there are no employee implications for this scheme, and in terms of financial implications, they're highlighted at Section 6, and the costs are also highlighted within the report and within the appendix. In terms of other implications, just to note as well, which is important, this ensures that we meet our statutory and legislative responsibilities for children going through adoption and permanence. And I'll just refer members back to the recommendations at Section 2 for the report to be noted and for approval of the scheme for Glasgow. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Robert?
It's probably an obvious question, but what's happened in the Rutherglen and Cambuslang areas which go to Glasgow Sheriff Court in the last period? And we've had curators ad litem for donkey's years, well before the 2014 scheme. Do we have a scheme in existence there and a panel on the go at the moment? Or if not, what's been happening there?
Councillor, it's been more of an ad hoc basis, and we've been using Lanarkshire curators and reporting officers. But what within Glasgow is that it was a time and motion that they were charging us for, as opposed to a set fee. So this confirms that it will be a set fee and it will be the same arrangement for Lanarkshire as it will be for Glasgow.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands. The meeting agreed to approve the report and the recommendations in Section 2.
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to items for noting. Item 9, Winter Plan Debrief 2022-23. That's pages 77 to 84 in your pack. And can I ask Craig again to speak to the report? Thank you.
Yes, thanks again, Chair. So members will recall previous briefing sessions that we gave over autumn and into the start of winter in recognition of the challenges which Winter Plan brings. And we have provided some of the background in paragraph 3 to some of that briefing, and indeed some of the work that was undertaken in preparation for winter. And in particular, we highlight the impact of Operation Flow, which was introduced around about January, and the fire break, which then took place in February, beginning of March. You'll see a range of learning points that we have identified as part of the multi-agency debrief that we held, and from that, these will then be built into the plan for the coming year. Probably one or two things I would want to highlight. One would be the significant multi-agency approach that we took, as well as the Health Board and the two partnerships. Both the councils in their wider sense were particularly helpful in terms of managing some of the pressures over the last winter, which were significant. And again, I think, well, hopefully members will recall, when we were given the briefing sessions earlier, we did highlight that much of the difficulty in planning for winter is the unpredictability, and the prevalence of flu in the last year was particularly high, and that had an impact, as people will recall. The other thing that I think is worth noting is that Lanarkshire is unique in having a number of our GP practices who volunteered to open their doors to patients on the 4th of the public holidays, or the 4th day of the public holidays, and indeed the Saturdays over January. And in this last period, that meant there was just shy of 4,000 patients that were able to be seen and managed by their own GP, as opposed to having to go to out of hours or indeed accident and emergency departments. And finally, the other bit that I would want people to recognise is the success of the vaccination programme, an extensive programme for both flu and indeed COVID vaccination. And we have, over the last 2 years, we have vaccinated somewhere in the order of, administered somewhere in the order of 2.4 million vaccines. It's been a huge effort to keep our population safe. And finally, I would highlight the updated performance reports that show the impact of Operation Flow and indeed the positive impact on things like delayed discharges that result from a more proactive approach to managing flow through the hospital. So the faster we're able to keep people going through the hospital, able to maximise the flow, what that means then is that people are getting home earlier, they're less disabled, disoriented when they do get home, and we're therefore able to maximise that approach, which again talks to the work that Ian was talking about earlier around Home First. And on that basis, I would ask members to approve the recommendations set out in paragraph 2, and that we build in that learning to our winter plan for 2023-24. And again, happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Alan?
Thanks, Chair. It's just on page 82, 6.2, bullet point 2, competition and pay. I know we've discussed it earlier, but this affects the academy, by the way, with North and South Lanarkshire. We have a situation where if you get into North as a home care worker, you're getting £2,000 more than South. And the challenges around this, 6 months ago, this administration went into a meeting with our home care workers to support them to get regraded. We're now sitting 6 months later, they're still not being regraded, they're getting £2,000 less than North Lanarkshire. Meanwhile, the rail strike's been settled, the NHS strike's been settled, the teachers, and we're sitting with our home care and we wonder why we can't recruit when we're paying £2,000 less than our neighbours across the Clyde. Thanks.
Ian, do you want to?
Yeah, I can offer a couple of comments on that. So when we're talking about, comparing pay, we have to look across the full spectrum of services. So obviously there's a rate of pay for staff working in the independent sector. I think it's about £10.90 is the rate of pay, which is actually less than the council offers its own social care staff. And as you say, different authorities have designed jobs differently, so they'll attract different kind of pay rates. So it's not always entirely straightforward comparing one job role with another across authority boundaries, because there might be different definitions to the job description. In terms of the job evaluation arrangements for our care at home team, I understand there's an appeal process later on this week, which will consider then the case for job evaluation. So obviously we'll wait the outcome of that, and we'll respond to that accordingly.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, Alan?
Can I just go back in? So 6 months down the line, we're still waiting to have a meeting this week. We can't recruit. My other point was the academy. If you go to the academy as a home care worker or a home helper, whatever we're calling them this week, right, as North Lanarkshire should be saying, when you come to us, you're going to get £2,000 more than South. There's a bit of an anomaly there, I think. Thank you.
Do you want to come back, Ian?
So, I mean, North Lanarkshire may well pay a little bit more than we do, but it's not all about just the core salary. Many people will consider things like travel distance, travel time in terms of their options for employment. So it may well be that people who live in South Lanarkshire will tend to choose to work within the area. So that's a primary consideration for them, how long it takes them to get to their work, as well as the rate of pay. So we're not in direct competition with North Lanarkshire in general. But we accept the point you're making that there's a range of pay grades for similar roles, and I suppose that's one of the things that's actually picked out in Craig's paper. That's a factor we need to consider going forward.
Thank you. Did you want to mention? Eileen?
Just to respond in relation to the job evaluation exercise for home carers, that is an ongoing process, as Ian's already mentioned. So it has been going on for about 6 months, and we're reaching the end of that process, and that's where it comes to a conclusion, hopefully within the coming weeks.
Is that okay, Alan?
No, that's late, man. There. It's ongoing 6 months. Meanwhile, we've had strikes for teachers, rail workers, NHS, OSL. 6 months. I think it's a disgrace, by the way. Considering this administration sat in November and supported our home care workers who are still out there now doing it. Just my opinion, maybe. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Got Alec Allison.
Slightly tongue-in-cheek, Chair. Page 7733. Could you maybe tell us which winter you're referring to, and also tell us how you managed to present paper to a meeting that hasn't taken place yet?
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Eileen.
Thanks very much. I think I would like to be quite positive and thank everybody for the work that they did throughout the winter and the winter before and through COVID and various different things. And if you just look at 3.3, and it's just, if you were reading it, the work that's there that wasn't there even 5 years ago, displaced Ukrainian asylum seekers, just various different things. Finances getting less each year that you have to work with, and you can't guarantee inclement weather. You don't know. This year has been, with the exception of 1 week, quite mild, but then you were hit with a very nasty flu that was taking its toll on a lot of different people. So I always think it's one of the things that's very difficult for people to put into place a winter plan, because Mother Nature doesn't just always do what we think it would maybe do. You can hope and try and do the best that you can. And I heard you talk about the vaccinations. I can only talk for the area that I know. It went very, very well. People were sort of treating it like a wee day out up to Lanark and get your injection, go to the park or go into B&Ms or do different things. So it did work and people were responding, and I think that's the main thing. And if nothing else for COVID, it has highlighted to people that, yeah, you need to go, you need to get your injections, you need to try very hard. So our workers are always excellent and continue to be excellent. And the people who have to try and work out what you would like as a winter plan, it is very difficult for the reasons that I've just said. So I think from here we should be sending out a thank you to everybody who worked right through the winter, and we get to this point, and then it will start again. And all it is, I don't mean it's a guessing game where a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? To the best of your ability, it is, but there's always a curveball maybe coming up the road, 10 feet of snow that you didn't know about, or it just happens. And then you have to try and work your way through it. So I think, all in all, everybody did excellent. And I just would like to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. I was just going to echo some of Eileen's points here. If you look at what has come into place in the last year, 18 months, when you look at the Home First, the delayed discharge teams, the facility at Blantyre, and the multi-agency teams, older people's group, clearly that has been has emanated from some of the winter planning funding that has specifically came from the Scottish Government, but it still happened under very, very difficult circumstances. Certainly difficult circumstances in terms of the financial envelope in relation to both health and social care. And we had asked the officers if they would produce information and figures, performance information in relation to the impact that it's having. And as Craig outlined, we're actually starting to get some of that now. And it is making an impact, and that will continue to be monitored both through this committee and the IGB. And just think, what we could actually achieve if the financial circumstances hadn't been so difficult and hadn't been so difficult to manoeuvre through over the past 5-10 years. Just think what we could actually do across the authority and what we are doing. So I would just echo Eileen's comments in relation to the winter planning report, and also to both the health and social care staff that are, working through severe circumstances and winters and conditions to protect the vulnerable people within South Lanarkshire, and they will continue to do that. So thank you for that. I don't see any more hands, so I'll ask, is the committee going to approve the report and agree to the recommendations in section 2?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Next item, I have no items of urgent business. So could I just thank all the officers present and thank them for the very comprehensive and informative reports, as always, and thank you all for attending and contributing to the meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.